Welcome to another one of our Vapor Chief Before You Buy videos. In this video we want to talk about extension cords and how important it is with our machines and really anybody's machine if you need to use an extension cord with your steamer to have the correct extension cord and more importantly the correct gauge. Now we understand that in a lot of cases you're not going to be able to plug your machine directly into the outlet. I get that. We use a 14-foot power cord off the machine, a 14-foot hose on our 100 and up. But even that sometimes is not long enough to plug the machine in where you need to. So we understand that somebody is going to use an extension cord. Now the problem is if you use an extension cord, you're going to make the travel of the electricity longer. You're going to create higher resistance and cause a lot of heat in the wiring, which could damage the machine and heat everything up and possibly cause a fire or burn components out. So in case there's some misunderstanding about what type of extension cord to use, we want to explain it to you. Now, I have three different extension cords here. Now, the video being a little bit far away, you might think all of these are pretty heavy-duty extension cords because we have a ground plug and we have the two electrical connectors here which can plug right into an outlet. And they look better than a normal extension cord that you might use for, say, plugging your Christmas tree lights in, which I'm sure you know that would be really dangerous if you tried to use that with a steamer. And most people aren't going to use that. But again, we have three different cords here rated at three different gauges and amp ratings. So I want to explain the different ratings, and if you can see in the video that not all three of these are the same thickness of wire and they're not rated the same. So this green one here, this is a thinner extension cord. Even though it has a ground plug on it, it's a thinner extension cord. It's rated at 16 gauge. We don't want to use a 16 gauge extension cord with our machines because it's not rated for a high enough amperage. So this extension cord, even though it might look heavy duty, it's out. You can't use it at all. The common extension cord that a lot of people use, and it's available in the big box stores, this is a 14 gauge extension cord. And people buy these in 25, 50, 100-foot lengths. They plug it into their outlet, they plug the other end into the steamer, they think it's going to be okay. But actually, this is not okay. At a short length, even this is not okay. 14 gauge is not the correct extension cord to use with a steamer, especially the wattage of our steamer, which is 1750 watts. This one right here, this is the correct extension cord. This is rated at 12 gauge, and not because it's a little fancier and because the plug's a little bit beefier. It's a thicker outer core, which means that the wiring inside is rated at 12 gauge. It's a thicker wire, it's a thicker copper. It carries electricity better, it's not going to heat up quite as much, so it's not going to cause as much resistance. So, and they're rated right on the cord. It's stamped right in the rubber, and when you go buy these in the stores, on the packaging, it tells you what the extension cord is rated at. So all of our steamers, whether it's the 75 machine, the 100 machine, the 125 injection machine, all of our machines, we want you to use a 12 gauge extension cord. Now, just because it's 12 gauge doesn't mean it can be an infinite length. We really don't want the extension cord being used any longer than 25 feet if possible. Again, our power cord is 14 feet. If you use a 25-foot extension cord, we don't really see the need to have the machine parked so far away from your electrical outlet that you need a gigantic extension cord. So this might help a little bit. I did a little chart here. We do want to use a 12 gauge extension cord. Now, a 12 gauge extension cord, such as the orange one that I showed here, up to 50 feet, it can carry 20 amps, which is fine. Our machine is going to pull about 14.5 amps. So this is basically extending your outlet. So a 12 gauge cord up to 50 feet will carry 20 amps. You're good. Now, here's the gray area, where if you had a 12 gauge cord, but it was over 50 feet or over, it's only going to be able to carry 15 amps. Now, you might think that, well, our machine is pulling 14.5, but with constant use, you still might heat up the wiring and you still might heat up the components inside the machine, which can cause some burning. So again, this gauge cord, 12 gauge, you can go up to 50 feet. We don't want to see it any longer than 50 feet. Here are the no-nos. We don't want you using a 14 gauge cord. 14 gauge cord is the most common one. It's cheaper. Those are the ones that most people already have in their shop. That might be fine for running your buffer. It might be fine for running your vacuum where it's not a heating element involved. But with a heating element such as a steamer, we don't want you using a 14 gauge cord at all because a 14 gauge cord up to 50 feet is only going to carry 15 amps. Now, as it gets hotter, it's going to increase the resistance in the wiring and it's going to cause a lot of heat. So even up to 50 feet, it's only going to be good for 15 amps. And over 15 feet, it's only going to be good at 10 amps. So it's going to be useless. Now, the green cord that we showed here, 16 gauge, don't even use that. But we know there are people out there that are using 16 gauge extension cords, 14 gauge extension cords, and those cause problems because the machine will not run as efficiently and you're causing too much heat. So anything that burns out inside the machine, any wires that get burned, any components that get burned, technically if it's used with with a poor rating extension cord, then you could have problems with your machine. Now that's not going to say that you're going to have problems right off the bat, but we know that a lot of our machines out there are sold to heavy duty users. So guys are using these machines 8 hours a day, 5-6 days a week. So with constant use, that's going to weaken the wiring inside the machine. It's going to char some of the connectors. So if you need to use an extension cord, we want it to be 12 gauge. 12 gauge up to 50 feet, but I prefer to see it at 25 feet. So if you have any questions on that before you buy a machine, tell me how far away you need to run your machine before you can get to an outlet, and I'll be able to explain this personally. But hopefully this video will help as far as what you need to do and what gauge extension cord you need to buy. Now again, if you go to Home Depot, Lowe's, any big box store, read the packaging. Read what gauge it is and what kind of amps it carries, and you'll know by the price. An extension cord of 25, 50 feet that's going to cost you $10, that's not going to be a good extension cord. The 12 gauge extension cords usually run about $40 and higher, depending on how many feet they are. So the better extension cords are going to cost a little bit more money, but it's worth the investment because if you're making the investment in a steamer, we want to see the machine run efficiently, and we don't want to see wiring problems inside. But if you have any questions, feel free to give us a call.